AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And we're live this morning with Alfred University Professor of Political Science Emeritus, Dr. Robert Heineman, to talk about the results of last night's primary and other things. Dr. Bob, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. I'm amazed you're able to get up early this morning after a late night.
Well, yeah, you know, I see a lot of the reporters, Liz Benjamin and others, saying that they can't wait for it to be over, and it's you know, no fun kind of thing. I kind of enjoy these things. Cynthia Nixon sent out a statement last night noting that one of the effects of, even though she lost, one of the effects of the race was the Cynthia Nixon effect, that she influenced the governor as she wanted to. Your thoughts?
Well, I think there are some indications that she did. And, of course, she's still on the working families line, and I don't know whether she'll stay on the line or not. I suppose she's capable of stepping off now or not campaigning, continuing her campaign. But at this point, obviously, in the whole political arena, the progressives and the socialist types are making a bit of a push here and there. So I think it does keep Governor Cuomo on his toes.
You know, Dr. Bob, there were different times last night in the lieutenant governor's race when it appeared that Jumaine Williams, the New York City councilman, could have pulled off a victory. What does that say?
Well, I think it, again, shows the strength of the downstate part of the Democrat Party, and the fact that upstate just doesn't have the political clout that it used to. And in that respect, and I'm not certain whether Williams is on the working families line or not with Cynthia Nixon. I'm not certain who they have on there as their lieutenant governor candidate. But Stephanie Miner, I think, out of Syracuse, is still in a position to cause considerable havoc to the Democrats in the general election. And the division of the Democrats at this point, I think, does give the Republicans a chance to pick up that governorship. But again, we're going to have to see how all this settles out. And I think, again, Nixon, what Nixon pulled? She pulled about 35% of the vote in the primary. You know, that's getting up there. If she'd have gotten up to 40%, I mean, that would have been, I think, a serious criticism. And again, it's hard to tell how hard Cuomo's people were working down in the New York City area, but I get the impression they were working pretty hard.
Cynthia Nixon last night put out an email saying that Governor Andrew Cuomo pulled a lot of dirty tricks at the last minute. Cynthia Nixon said one of the dirty tricks was accusing her of being anti-Semitic in the New York City area, and that was in the last 72 hours of the race. That's what Cynthia Nixon said last night.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't sound like she's going to go away quietly, and there is considerable evidence that Cuomo did do something like that. So the nastiness surrounding the governor, not only with corruption, but also with some of these campaign tricks, doesn't make his chances in November any better. These things come back to bite you, and this could well happen in this case as well.
The victory that he had last night, what does that do for his chances to go to Washington, D.C.?
Well, that's correct. I think, again, if Cuomo moves into the general election and pounds Molinaro substantially, then I think he can make a claim to be a potential candidate for the presidency. But I don't think he's going to be able to pull that off. And the chances then for him to be a credible candidate, I think, drop off considerably. A lot of people around him, though, think that that's his primary goal, is to be a candidate for the presidency. And I guess you're going to find him going after Trump again and again with all kinds of lawsuits and other things. But at this point, I think he's got quite a bit of gardening to do at home here that still needs to be done.
Talking, of course, to Alfred University Professor Emeritus of Political Science, Dr. Robert Heineman. Dr. Heineman, the state assembly race, an upset there last night. Assemblyman Joe Arrigo defeated by Marjorie Burns, the Republican from Caledonia. Is Arrigo on any other lines?
No, I think not. And that was an interesting race, and it was quite a nasty race. I think Mr. Arrigo's problem, and I've known him for many, many years, but I think the key there that doesn't get mentioned to any extent, and that's why we do these analyses here, Brian, is the resignation of Lowell Conrad as chairman of the Livingston County Republican Party. Mr. Conrad ran a very tight and very powerful Republican organization in Livingston County, but he retired here this late summer, early fall. And Mr. Arrigo, I think in the past, as a number of other Republican candidates, depended on that organization to turn out the vote for them. And when Mr. Conrad stepped aside, Mr. Arrigo was left without any real organizational basis. He didn't have any separate kind of organization
in Livingston County.
Right, and that, I think that hurt him a lot. So it's those sorts of things that people are not really aware of, but I guarantee you the candidates are aware of it, and I think that hurt him.
Interesting insight there, Dr. Bob. The state senate primary in Steuben County and elsewhere in the state senator Tom O'Mara district. It looks like O'Mara is going to be facing off Amanda Kerskisner. That's an interesting race. Amanda Kerskisner is a waitress from the Ithaca area, Tompkins County area, defeating the Schuyler County lawmaker Michael LaSalle, and the count there was 7,712 and 4,000 for Amanda Kerskisner, 7,712. Michael LaSalle 4,739. And from interviewing her on the Newsmaker show, she talked about being a Bernie Sanders Democrat and said she never would have gotten into the race had it not been for Bernie Sanders. So that's the candidate that State Senator Tom O'Mara is going to be facing off. Senator Young, she had no opposition either party, right, Dr. Bob?
Right. And nor does Joe Giglio or Phil Palmisano.
Okay. And as far as Senator Young's position on the Senate Finance Committee, do we know what that is with the news that from last night that the Independent Democrat Coalition, who used to caucus and vote with the Republicans in the state Senate, giving the state Senate the majority? Well, it was also dissolved back in the IDC Senate was dissolved back in April. Largely due to Cynthia Nixon's pressure on Governor Andrew Cuomo. But do we know the future for Senator Young there as far as her position in the state Senate Finance Committee goes, Doc?
Well, I think basically the key in all this is this guy Felder, who runs as a Democrat, but caucuses with the Republicans. So that's a pretty key race, and he was opposed in the primary by another fellow, but I would guess if Felder lost, we would know that already today.
I'm looking at the forward.com. It says Simca Felder holds on for a win in contentious Brooklyn primary.
Right. So he, right now, I think even without the independent Democrats, the Republicans have with Felder, have a one-vote majority. So we'll have to see. We'll just have to see how all this
plays out in November. Is Senator Young still in charge of the campaign for the New York State Senate Republicans?
Yes, I believe she's carrying a pretty important role in that area, and she's got a real challenge ahead of her this time. Although, again, if Molinaro is making a strong move, I think that'll help some of these down ticket Republicans. So again, it's way too early to make any kind of definite statements here, but it's a challenge. It always is a challenge, I guess, for the Republicans, and Senator Young has done a tremendous job, frankly, of managing to hold together a majority there for the Republicans in the state Senate. But this year will be quite a bit different.
Talking with Dr. Bob here on a Friday. Got to take a quick break, check the forecast. Stay with us.
It's Jeep Adventure Days at Maple City Dodge in Hornell. Select models of 2018 Jeep Renegade Latitude 4x4 have 0% financing for 72 months. Incredible! What about the 2018 Pacifica? Named Family Car of the Year by Cars.com? A 2018 Pacifica Touring L lease for $299 a month for 24 months with $2,999 down at signing. Some restrictions apply on both offers. Visit Maple City Dodge for the real deal every time.
Checking in with meteorologist Rob Carolyn, who's a New England-based meteorologist. Hey, what can you tell us this morning about the gas explosions in Massachusetts?
Well, I can tell you it was the sign of the coming apocalypse, Brian. That and the fact that Cuomo won a chance to run for third term. If that doesn't tell you the world's ending, nothing will. I know we had a high-pressure line of gas yesterday kind of feed into low-pressure lines, and it caused about 100 gas line explosions yesterday in the towns of Lawrence, Andover, and North Andover, Massachusetts. Numerous roads are closed in the area, roads, exits off the interstate. Actually affected meteorologist Gary Best. He spent the night in the hotel. He had to evacuate his neighborhood. Two of his neighbors lost their homes due to fire. But the sad thing is, I have a little ditty for you this morning. We were all hoping Cuomo wouldn't win. Unfortunately, Miss Nixon took it on the chin. Weather-wise, Brian, we're looking at lots of cloudiness out there this morning. May even see a shower today. We're kind of stuck. High pressure's building in, but this moisture is trapped underneath it. If it was June or July, the sun would be strong and it'd burn the clouds off. But now that we're getting close to the autumnal equinox, the sun quite not that strong anymore. So it's going to have a difficult time trying to get rid of them today. We're up around 80. Sunrise this morning was about 6:50. It'll set tonight at 7:21. Tonight looks to be partly cloudy. A little bit of patchy fog may develop. Nighttime lows will be around 65. Tomorrow, partial sun, 80 to 85. Clear to partly cloudy tomorrow night, 60 to 65. Sunday, sunshine, Brian, warm, 80 to 85. Looks like the remnants of Florence, which made landfall this morning near Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, will bring us some rain Monday and Tuesday of next week.
And we're back with Alfred University Professor of Political Science Emeritus, Dr. Robert Heineman. Dr. Bob, if we could talk about Brett Kavanaugh for a moment.
Well, surely, yes.
The latest there is that there's some letter criticizing Brett Kavanaugh, something about a high school date or something to that effect. And it's some sort of sexual misconduct allegations going back to Kavanaugh's high school years. Some conservatives are comparing this to the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill situation. Your thoughts, Dr. Heineman?
Well, Anita Hill pretty clearly lied. I don't think there's any question about that. But who knows what this is involved, and when would that have been? When Kavanaugh would have been in high school?
Yes.
1950s or 19... Come on. No, this is just a last desperate attempt by, and apparently the person involved will not identify herself. Is that correct? I mean,
I'm not sure. I know that the attorney involved with this case was the attorney who went after State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, and CNBC.com is reporting that Senator Schumer is involved with this accusation somehow.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a last ditch attempt by the Democrats to derail the Kavanaugh nomination, and I guess most people, in fact, I think a huge percentage of people can see this for what it is, and I don't think it's going to have any effect one way or another. But it does show you how desperate the Democrats are in this respect. And anything I can see and have heard is that Kavanaugh has performed exceptionally well in the hearings. He handles himself very well. So we'll just have to see how this, the press may grab it and start trying to run with it. But I think the Senate Judiciary Committee votes next week. And that'll move it onto the Senate floor pretty fast, I think.
Now, it's being reported by CNN and others that Democrats sent this information, that Senator Feinstein and Senator Schumer were involved with, sent this information about Kavanaugh off to the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. What do you make of that move?
Well, I just think it's unfortunate. The FBI's got enough trouble being involved in all kinds of political controversies. I don't think, frankly, they need to be involved in another one. And I'm not, well, of course, the FBI does do a clearance function on these candidates. In other words, when someone is picked for a judgeship or whatever, the FBI does do background checks. So I suppose that's where they come in. Again, I think until we get something definite, there's not much more you can do about it.
On the Paul Manafort trial, reading from Newsmax here, President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman Paul Manafort is nearing a plea deal with U.S. prosecutors in order to avoid a second criminal trial, sources said yesterday. The story goes on to say it remains unclear if the deal will include Manafort cooperating with the Russia probe and Robert Mueller. What do you make of that, Dr. Bob?
I don't know. I think we're better off sticking to some of the election results here, Brian. I just wanted to say, if you don't mind,
no, go ahead.
Sheriff's race in Allegheny County, compared to, say, the assembly race in up in your area, I thought was a pretty civil race. There was some nastiness by some of the supporters here and there, but I thought Allegheny County, frankly, had a pretty clear choice of what kind of sheriff they wanted, and I thought Mr. McNey laid out a pretty clear statement of what he thought the sheriff's department should be doing, more aggressive in terms of prosecuting crime and drug use and that sort of thing. And Sheriff Whitney laid out, of course, his years of experience and his involvement in the community and the work he and his wife have done in a lot of various areas.
Dr. Heineman, do you have a sense of where that race was won for Sheriff Whitney or where it was lost for Walt McNey?
Well, I think Whitney had a much better sense of how to run, how to be a politician and run politically.
I should rephrase that. I'm talking about towns, Angelica, Alfred, Wellsville. Where was the race won for Whitney, and where was it that McNey could have done better? Do you have a sense of that this morning? I
don't have those numbers, Brian, but I do know that coming in early, Angelica went 2-1 for Whitney, but of course Whitney's originally from Angelica, and then of course the whole Bolivar-Richburg ward area there, he's always run very heavily there. I'm not certain, but my understanding is in Andover, for example, where Mr. Mackney lives, he carried that by only 30 or 40 votes. So he did not do nearly as well there in his home area. Now, I'm not certain about his background. He has been very active in Cuba, and I would guess he did pretty well over there. But again, I don't have the numbers from Cuba, so that is something we'll have to look at. But again, having been a sheriff for 8 years, having been active in a lot of organizations that are countywide, Mr. Whitney knew a lot of people across the county. So I think that it made it tough for anybody who's going to challenge him. And Mr. Mackney is a very good cop. There's no two ways about that. But I think the people in Allegheny County wanted something a little different in that respect. But generally, I think both of them should be congratulated on keeping it pretty clean and to the point. And so that was kind of satisfying.
Yeah, another race that was like that was the Watches McCarthy race, the Matthew McCarthy, Chauncey Watches race. Watches the apparent victor from last night, and I shouldn't say the apparent victor, the victor from last night. But that was another one where both the candidates kept things very friendly.
Yeah. Well, you got to give the voters a choice, and because that's part of the system. But you don't have to get down in the mud pit there and sling as much mud as you can.
Hey, Dr. Bob, we are out of time. I can't thank you enough for joining us live this morning, the morning after the primary. Thank you so much, Dr. Heineman.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to go out and pull up a few yard signs now. Talk to you later.